Have you ever felt like toddlers are speaking some secret language?
Yeah.
Like, they're communicating, but you just can't quite crack the code?
Right.
Well, researchers are using eye tracking
Oh, wow.
to unlock those secrets. And what you're finding is blowing my mind.
It's true. This cutting-edge technology lets us see
That's amazing.
the world through a toddler's eyes, literally.
Wow.
We're going to be diving into a research paper from the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders.
Oh, cool.
And trust me, this isn't your average study.
So before we get to the really interesting parts,
Okay.
let's set the stage for today's deep dive.
Right?
Imagine researchers in Sweden
Okay.
with these super advanced eye trackers.
Wow.
We're talking Tobii 1750 and Tobii TX300.
Nice.
The kind that pick up even the tiniest eye movements.
Oh, wow.
And a bunch of toddlers just hanging out.
Uh-huh.
The goal was to understand how toddlers look at other children
Interesting.
and what that might tell us about their social development,
Okay.
especially when it comes to autism.
You got it. This is all part of a long-term study
Okay.
called EASE, which stands for Early Autism Sweden.
Okay.
They've been following these kids since infancy.
Gotcha.
Some with a typical chance of developing autism, others with a higher likelihood
Okay.
because of family history.
So they're trying to piece together
Exactly.
this developmental puzzle
Yeah.
using eye movements as clues.
Yes.
98 toddlers,
Yeah.
18 months old,
Wow.
all wired up to these high-tech eye trackers. What were they watching?
Whoa.
Some stimulating high-def cartoon.
Actually, it was much simpler than that. They were watching videos of, wait for it,
What?
other toddlers interacting.
Oh, that's interesting.
A pretty classic scenario.
What was it?
A boy wants a toy that a girl is playing with.
Uh-huh.
She refuses, and he gets upset.
Sounds familiar.
Reminds you of every play date ever, right?
Totally.
But I'm guessing there's a twist.
Of course there is. What is it?
You bet. There were two versions of the video.
Okay.
In one, the girl just ignores the boy after refusing.
Okay.
In the other, she teases him a bit.
Oh, interesting.
Now, this was intentional.
Yeah.
They were building on some earlier work
Gotcha.
where they saw some intriguing differences
Okay.
in how children with and without autism reacted to these scenarios.
So they're testing to see if those differences
Yeah.
are already there in toddlerhood.
Exactly.
Okay, so what happened?
All right, here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
We're not just looking at how long toddlers look at something,
Uh-huh.
but also when they shift their gaze.
Gotcha.
And those tiny changes tell a story.
I see.
When the boy reached for the toy, typically developing toddlers would shift their focus to the girl's face
Like,
after a slight delay.
oh, interesting.
Almost like they're reading the situation
Uh-huh.
and anticipating what will happen next.
Like, ooh, drama. Let's see how she reacts.
Exactly. But here's the thing.
Well-
Toddlers later diagnosed with autism
Yeah.
were much less likely
Right.
to make that same gaze shift.
So they weren't as tuned in to her potential reaction.
That's one interpretation.
Mm.
And it leads to a lot of fascinating questions
Or what?
about how these toddlers are processing
Mm.
this simple interaction.
Okay.
Are they missing social cues?
Mm.
Is their attention getting stuck?
Interesting.
Or could it be something deeper?
Okay.
Something about how their brains are making predictions?
Whoa, that predictive abilities thing.
Yeah,
Sounds really interesting.
it is.
But I need some help
Okay,
understanding what that even means.
that's exactly where we're headed next.
Okay.
We're going to unpack this whole predictive brain concept.
Awesome.
And trust me, it'll change how you think about not just toddlers,
Hmm.
but your own brain, too.
Okay, listeners, hang tight because we're about to get into
Yeah.
some mind-bending territory
We are.
right after this.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
We're cracking a secret code today.
We are.
And speaking of codes,
Mm-hmm.
before the break, we were just starting to decode
Yeah,
this idea of predictive ability.
right.
It sounds super sci-fi,
It does.
but you're saying that's actually how our brains work?
It is, yeah.
All the time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a really hot topic right now in neuroscience.
Oh,
This idea that our brains are always making these predictions
Yes.
about what's going to happen next,
okay.
based on what we've experienced before
Yeah.
and what we're sensing right now.
So it's like our brains are trying to stay ahead of reality,
Yeah,
like a mind reader.
kind of, yeah.
Wow.
And it's not just some trick.
Right.
It's how we navigate the world.
Okay.
Think about it. Being able to anticipate what's coming
Yeah.
helps us avoid danger,
Okay.
understand social cues,
Uh-huh.
make sense of complicated situations.
So if I see a ball flying towards me, my brain doesn't wait until I get hit.
Exactly.
It predicts the trajectory.
Yeah.
And helps me duck out of the way.
You got it.
Wow.
And on a more subtle level, it helps us understand those social interactions.
Okay.
So if someone raises their hand, our brain predicts they're going to wave,
right,
and we get ready to wave back.
It's all happening so fast.
It is.
Below our conscious awareness.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But how does this relate back to the toddlers in the study?
Right.
And those differences in their gaze patterns?
Yeah, that's where it gets really fascinating.
Okay.
Some researchers believe that difficulties with this predictive processing could be a key factor in autism.
Oh, wow.
They suggest that the brains of people on the autism spectrum might prioritize sensory information.
Prioritize?
Yeah.
So some senses get more attention.
More like their brains might focus on different details or aspects of a situation, leading to different predictions.
Interesting.
Imagine your brain is like a supercomputer.
Okay.
Constantly getting all this data from your senses.
Right.
It can't process everything at once.
Makes sense.
So it has to decide what's most important.
Okay, so if my brain is good at predicting, it filters out the noise and focuses on the signal.
Exactly.
But what if it's struggling to predict?
Then it might get stuck on different details, which leads to those different reactions and behaviors.
And that could explain why the toddlers who were later diagnosed weren't as focused on the girl's face after the boy asked for the toy.
Right, because their brains weren't predicting her reaction the same way. Their attention might have been drawn to something else.
Like what?
Maybe the toy itself or something in the background.
Okay.
We don't know for sure,
right,
but it's a really intriguing possibility.
So it's not that these toddlers aren't interested in the social interaction.
Exactly.
It's just that their brains might be processing it differently.
You got it.
Which has huge implications.
It does.
For how we understand and support these children.
Exactly.
Because if we can figure out how their brains are working, maybe we can help them develop those skills.
That's what's so exciting about early intervention programs. There's a lot of research going on now.
Cool.
Looking at how to support communication and interaction in toddlers who might be on the spectrum.
So it's not just about teaching them social skills.
Right.
It's about helping their brains make sense of the world in a way that feels safe and predictable.
Exactly.
So if you're a parent and you've noticed that your toddler isn't quite following social cues the same way, this study gives us hope that there are ways to help.
Absolutely.
And even if your child doesn't have autism, understanding these differences can help us be more patient and understanding in our interactions.
Exactly.
There was another interesting finding in this study.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
The one about the ADOS-2.
You got it.
That stands for Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule.
It does.
And it's something clinicians use to assess different aspects of autism.
Right.
This study was looking specifically at the scores related to restrictive and repetitive behaviors.
Okay.
So it's not just about social skills. It's about those tendencies to want routines and predictability that we were just talking about.
Yeah, what they found was the toddlers who scored higher on that scale were actually less likely to look at the girl's face.
So their preference for predictability extended to their gaze behavior.
It seems that way.
Like their brains were saying, too much unpredictability, I'm going to focus on something else.
That's a great way to put it.
And it really makes us think beyond simple explanations.
It does.
We can't assume that a kid not making eye contact is being rude.
Exactly.
Or disinterested. There could be a whole other thing going on.
Exactly.
And understanding that can help us create better environments and interactions.
Absolutely.
For everyone.
Yeah, this is making me rethink.
I know, right?
How we interpret gaze.
Yeah, I'm already noticing things I never paid attention to before.
That's the cool thing about research like this.
Yeah.
It opens our eyes to new ways of understanding the world.
And speaking of opening our eyes, there's another aspect of this study I want to talk about. The way they analyzed the data.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier about the importance of timing. Not just looking at the overall looking time.
Yeah, can you explain that a little more?
A lot of eye tracking studies in the past just focused on how long someone looks.
Okay.
But this study shows that looking at the when and the how of gaze shifts can reveal even more.
So it's not just about how much attention they're paying, but also how it's shifting over time.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in this study, the difference was only apparent at a specific moment, right after the boy reached for the toy.
Oh, wow.
If they just looked at the overall time, they might have missed that.
So they zoomed in.
They did.
On that split second when the interaction became unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that's where they saw the difference.
You got it.
That's so cool.
And it shows how powerful these data analysis techniques are.
Yeah.
They can capture those tiny but meaningful variations.
It's like we're moving beyond the snapshot and into the movie.
I love that.
Of how the brain works.
And this detailed analysis could go way beyond
real
autism research.
Wow.
It could be applied to all sorts of things.
Good.
Language development.
Okay.
Decision-making.
Interesting.
Visual perception.
It's like a whole new level of understanding.
It is.
Of how our brains work.
Exactly.
And that understanding can help us.
Absolutely.
Develop more effective treatments.
Yeah.
Create better environments. And ultimately, make a better world for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way.
Yeah.
Inspired to pay more attention.
Right.
To those little cues in people's gaze.
I agree.
Speaking of learning.
Okay.
We're going to shift gears a bit.
Right.
In the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We're going to explore what this all means.
Right.
For early intervention.
Yeah.
And how we can support the development of social skills.
Awesome.
In toddlers who might be on the spectrum.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back.
We'll be back in a flash.
We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive.
It's been a journey.
It has.
From tiny eye movements.
I know, right?
To these big questions about the brain.
Absolutely. And, you know, I love those aha moments.
Of course.
Who knew we could learn so much?
Right.
Just from watching where a toddler's looking.
So much information hidden in plain sight.
I know, it's amazing.
Just waiting to be discovered.
But before we go, I want to make sure we connect the dots for our listeners.
Yeah.
We've talked about these gaze patterns, the predictive processing, and the link to repetitive behaviors.
Right.
What does it all mean for parents and caregivers?
That's the big question, right?
It is. What can we actually do with this knowledge?
One of the big takeaways from this research is the importance of early intervention.
That makes sense.
The earlier we can identify these subtle differences, the sooner we can provide support.
But what does that support look like?
Well, there are a lot of different approaches.
Okay.
And it always depends on the child's needs.
Right.
But some things that come up a lot are predictable routines, visual supports,
and helping them develop social communication skills.
Okay, so routines and visual supports.
Yeah.
That's like using picture schedules.
Exactly.
To show what will happen next.
Right, making the world feel less overwhelming.
Makes sense.
And more predictable.
And when it comes to communication, there are so many strategies.
There are.
Like using social stories.
Right.
To help with tricky social situations.
Yeah.
Or teaching them how to express themselves.
Those are all good ones.
I've even heard about using video modeling.
Oh, yeah.
So kids can actually watch other kids interact.
That's a great one.
And learn from that.
It really taps into that visual learning that many of these kids thrive on.
And of course, it's not just about therapy or school.
Yeah.
Parents are so important too.
Absolutely.
Building those strong relationships at home.
That's the foundation.
This study was about these tiny eye movements.
It was.
But it's really showing a bigger picture.
It is.
About how to create a better world. A more inclusive world.
For all children.
I couldn't agree more.
It's about meeting kids where they are.
Yes.
Understanding them.
Right.
And giving them what they need.
To help them thrive.
That's a great note to end on.
It is.
I hope everyone learned something new today.
Me too.
And maybe even shifted your perspective.
That's what it's all about.
Keep those minds curious and those eyes open.
I like that.
And remember, even the smallest details
can
lead to the biggest discoveries.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
See ya!